Hello, amazing parents and caretakers, and welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. I'm your family empowerment coach, Celia Kibler. I'm a mom of a blended family of 5 kids. I'm a grandma of 9 kids, an author, a teacher, a speaker, and a consultant with over 40 years of training and real-life parenting experience. I'm here to offer you practical, doable tips, strategies, and techniques that will pump up your parenting skills and create peace, love, and laughter throughout your family. In addition, I'll be interviewing some great humans that are on a mission to make your life a better, happier, and healthier life. So let's not waste any time and get started with the next episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Thanks for listening. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. We are talking food today and healthy living, and one of my favorite topics. So I brought in an expert, Stephanie Adler. She is here with Stephanie Adler Wellness, and we are going to talk about your position in leading your children into a healthy lifestyle. Because, you know, it's a rush and racy world out there, and we wind up doing a lot of things that we later regret. So let's talk about what we can do proactively so that your kids are living a better life and a healthier life. So Stephanie, thank you for being here on the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast.
Hi, Celia. I'm so excited to be here with you and talking about such an important topic. I mean, I think when we look today, 51% of kids have a chronic health condition. This is something that is truly an epidemic in our modern society, and we need to be asking the question, at what cost is this chasing convenience? And I'm really excited to provide some real solutions for parents and moms and their children. And I think it's going to be really, really impactful. So thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here. It's true, like you say, how come all this illness, all this obesity, all these issues that kids have now that were adult problems like diabetes and things like that, and now it's common in children, and not just, oh, some kids are getting it. A lot of kids are getting sick often. What can we do about it? And, what goes in comes out. And so let's get started. First, if you would you share with us how you got so passionate about this, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story actually starts when I was a kid. My parents say that I had digestive issues from the day I came out of the womb. And I don't remember a time in my childhood, like when I didn't have stomach aches. I look at pictures of us, as kids, and like sometimes, I mean, of course, there are some where I'm like smiling and happy, but there's also a lot where I'm like kind of sitting in the corner looking really sad. And I had stomach aches all the time. And I ended up going to see what my parents, we talked about it at the doctor's office for years. They kept being like, oh, she'll grow out of it. She'll grow out of it. Finally, we went to a GI doctor. They ran a bunch of tests on me, gave me a bunch of medications over a few years. I ended up with a pretty blanket diagnosis of IBS and was told that I was just going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. And at 12 years old, I refused to accept that. I was strong-willed even from a young age. And, it's funny, I actually learned as an adult that the doctor told my mom, like, my mom didn't tell me this when I was a child, but, as an adult, she shared with me that the doctor had told her I was making it up and that I was doing it for attention and that she had real kids to treat and to get out of her office because she couldn't find anything really wrong with me and therefore couldn't fix me, right?
Don't you love that? Did they teach that in medical school? Was there a course on how to be, a schmuck? I'm like,
it makes my blood boil thinking about it. I mean, I remember going into her office and saying, like, I call my mom from school because I'm like having diarrhea in the bathroom and I want to go home. And her being like, I don't care if you're having diarrhea. I just want it to be like at a predictable time for you. And me being like, what do you mean you don't care if I have diarrhea? You're my GI doctor.
Right.
So bizarre.
Gosh, you're clearly imagining that.
Yes, exactly. And like also not to play devil's advocate here, but I think like a lot of it was like wrapped up in anxiety. I would get anxious about having, but it doesn't mean it wasn't real. But like I would
Right.
get anxious about having stomach issues, and then my stomach issues would get worse. But they weren't talking to me about stress management. They weren't talking to me about anxiety. Anyways, around 12 years old, 12, 13 years old, when all this was happening, I decided to change my diet, despite my
You
doctors
go, girl.
that my food had nothing to
Crazy
do.
teenager.
I know. I was also like kind of a weirdo and really into cooking. I would like
Me too.
watch cooking shows, and like write
Weirdos of the
all.
world unite.
So I felt really empowered to do it because I did love to cook. And despite them telling me it wouldn't help me, symptoms that I had for 13 years went away within a few months of changing my diet. And I became so aware of the relationship between food as a catalyst for disease in the body or food as medicine. And so, that started me off on this obsession with health and wellness, which then led me to go to school to learn more about functional nutrition. I became really amazingly like in awe of the female reproductive system and women's bodies and decided to specialize in everything from preconception all the way through childhood nutrition. And for me, it's about when we are nourished and we're going to talk about this more, in terms of like what is a nourished mother and how does that change the family. But I've really seen how transformative it is when a woman really reclaims her health and trusts her bodies and feels confident in how to nourish herself. What trickles down with her children, what trickles down to her family. And like when we give when we give our kids what I call the gift of generational wellness, it's truly the biggest gift we can give our children. And so I gave birth to my son 20 months ago and have been able to just like put all this into practice. And it's been so amazing and wonderful to be able to do after having coached women, and doing it for several years. So that's how I got into this and why I'm so passionate about it. And I'm just so excited to, yeah, be able to share more today.
I love all that, and it's so true. It's a whole picture. There's all this talk about getting control over all these prescriptions and what are they called? You know, shot things we get.
Oh, vaccines.
Vaccines. There you go. Ding, ding, ding. And, there's all this talk about all that and how that affects us. And I work, to stop parents from yelling at their kids because people also don't realize that's part of the wellness circle. And and nutrition has just evolved into this like, for sake of a better word, poisonous, you know, product thing. I don't know what to call it. It's a
Yeah, it's
PPT,
manufactured
a
food. It's
poisonous product
industrialized.
thing. And
Yeah.
I was saying before we started recording, I decided to save this for recording. I was just working with my client today who is 80 years old, and she was raised on a farm. And on that farm, they grew everything. They went out, they got their meat, she even knows how to dress animals, which we were laughing about the word dress because you're really kind of undressing them.
Yeah.
But they had their chickens, they grew all their plants, they grew their vegetables, their fruit, like everything was grown
Yeah.
and everything was as healthy and clean as it could be.
Yeah.
And there was illness then, but there wasn't like it is now, and certainly not the stomach problems that so many show.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I mean, I actually get my meat at a farm that we like pay to be members of so we can partially own the animals so that we can have our meat in a way that it's not put in a chlorine bath. I mean, I think that it's like these things that people don't even realize. Like if you're buying organic meat at the grocery store, that meat has been processed in a way where it's dunked in chlorine to kill any bad bacteria, but it's also killing off a lot of the good beneficial bacteria. And like then you're eating chlorine. I mean, like, and it's also in our water. I mean, it's that people are so disconnected from their food system. Your friend or your client, like that is what it was like for so long and how our bodies evolved to work in harmony with in our relationship with the animals and nature. Like it was symbiotic, it worked. And it's interesting. I just learned that the first grocery store isn't even 100 years old. Like,
Really?
yes, 1926 was like the
Wow.
real first
That's an
real grocery
interesting
store.
fact.
you know, like we are so we've in such a short period of time diverged so far from where we came from. And I'm so one of the things that I would do with clients is really teach them about traditional nutrition. When I'm helping women get pregnant, one of the things we often need to bring in is organ meat. Organ meat is so rich in vitamin A. It's also really critical for growing brains. I mean, my son has been one of his first foods was liver, and he loves liver. And I know you and I have talked about liver before. We're all team chopped liver here, Jewish Ashkenazi women,
Right.
but but everyone needs to be eating liver. But with a lot of my clients, like they've never ever had it before. They're 35 years old. They've never had it before. And, I got a message from a client yesterday. She was like, "Oh my God, I love pate." It took her 3 months to get over the fear of eating
Right.
it. And
And then
finally,
you're
she's
thinking,
like,
why
it's
haven't I
amazing.
eaten it over all these
Yeah,
years?
exactly. But so these traditional foods, like if you were dressing an animal in your backyard, you used every part of it,
Every
right?
part. Right.
But now when you go to the grocery store and you get your chicken breasts that are skinless and boneless and don't resemble anything really like a chicken, it's easy to forget, like, well, that's maybe actually not that good for you. We need the skin. If you're eating lean meat like that, you're actually depriving your bodies of vitamins A and K. It like strips your body of those nutrients, which are so critical for hormone development and for fertility and for brain health and all of these really amazing things. So, I don't even remember fully how we got here, but when you were sharing, your 80-year-old client, I was thinking I was just at the gym on Monday and I sat like in the little lounge area for a minute while I was waiting for my husband to be done with the cold plunge. And they have like an older gathering, like an older people's gathering where, I don't know, there's silver sneakers or something like that. And they were talking about their grandkids. And I had like one headphone in, but I was kind of listening with the other. And they were talking about how all their grandkids have like all these food sensitivities. And they were like, none of us had those back in the day.
Allergies. No one was allergic to peanuts. No one, when you went to
No.
school and we could cook stuff from home, you can't do that anymore either.
Totally. And I actually have a podcast episode that I can share with you if you want to put it in the show notes where I talk through why the health of our our people like our society is degrading generation by generation and like why basically we're inheriting the microbiome of our parents, which is compromised by and each layer when we're introducing industrial foods and introducing antibiotics, things like that. And so like, I kind of talk through like why that's happening because it is very real that all of this
Yeah.
is happening and that kids are really suffering, and it is our responsibility as parents to be the sovereign of our health and therefore they're also the sovereign of their health until they can take responsibility for it. And like the time is now. I mean, we really don't have
Yeah.
time to work on it.
And absolutely like question authority. I think a lot of the problem in these generations is we're so trusting. Like, well, they wouldn't poison us. They wouldn't give us things that are bad for us. They wouldn't put aluminum in baby food. They wouldn't do that. They do. And stop trusting and really read ingredients. Teach your children how to read, a food label and what information is, stated on that label. I get an applesauce and I'm going to screw up the name. It's a simple name. It's like honey something apples. That's the type of apples they are. Honey crisp, honey something, I don't know. And there's a farm that grows them and they make this applesauce.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have sugar in it because these apples are so sweet. And all that's in it, when you look at the ingredients, apples. That's it. There's nothing else in this applesauce but apples. And it's amazing applesauce. I love it. But, if you want to eat apple, you want to eat applesauce. Same thing. But that's the thing is you need to take the time to learn what you're eating.
Yeah. And I love how you were saying about, the questioning authority. I mean, I think that people need to, and I think a lot of people did wake up to this in the last few years. I think there's a lot more talk about it in a way that really excites me as someone who's been preaching this for, a decade. Like I've been giving seminars about why seed oils are the worst thing for us, for a long time. And now it's finally being talked about on the main stage. And I'm so grateful that that's happening. And I think, yeah, people are waking up a little bit, post pandemic, really starting to just recognize, oh, like maybe there is a little bit of like some veneer here. Like, I don't
Right.
know if I can really trust in everything. And I think that that's awesome. And like, it really comes down to even like the most basic nutrition advice. Not that applesauce is bad, but I just think is
Right.
a good example. Like I I thought of when you were talking about applesauce, like I take my son to a nature class on Fridays, and with that said, like there's a certain type of person who's like attracted to going to a nature class in the middle of winter in Colorado. Like people who really want to be outside, who maybe are a little bit more natural minded anyways, like this isn't your average like person is just like, oh, let's sign up to sit outside in 20-degree weather. But
Right.
I'm one of those people. And we did go to a nature class, and there's at the end of the class, we do like a little tea time and snack. Everyone has to bring their own snack. And I, obviously, as the work that I do as a functional nutritionist, I'm looking around. My son is usually the only one whose snack doesn't come out of a package. And like most of these kids are doing these little pouches, you know? And look, it's not like applesauce is a bad food. I posted about this on social media and everyone was like, oh, I make my own pouches and da 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 da. It's not that the fruit is a problem. I mean, I do have a lot of issues with the pouches in general. The materials that they're
Yeah.
being made in, they test pretty high for heavy metals and things like that. But it's more so like what your kid is not getting if they're just getting fruit in a pouch.
Right.
Like there's so much that I think is needs to be rewritten for people around what is actually beneficial for our children. So everyone's, kids is eating like pouches and like, little packages of organic, basically goldfish, but they're not called goldfish because they're the Whole Foods organic brand, but the
Right.
second ingredient is
But they're
still
the same thing.
spoiled.
Right.
Yeah. And my son's lunch or snack was liver. Talk about liver more, but he had some beef liver chopped up. He had like little balls of butter that I roll up for him as butter. And I gave him one chicharron, like a little chicharrones, because it's like this a puff. He's very interested in the other kids' snacks, of course. So it
Right.
kind of looks like they're puffs that those like gross things that they get. No offense if anyone likes those. And so I give him one of those. And like I think a lot of people will look at that and actually think that I'm not feeding my kid healthy. Where's the
Right.
vegetables? Where's
Or
the
you're
fruit?
weird. Right. Right.
But you know what? Our kids need healthy fats. Our kids need like to fuel their growing brains. They need healthy fats. They need animal foods. Yes, my son loves
They
apples.
need
I'll
iron.
happily
They
give
need,
him,
right.
yes, iron, copper, I mean just vitamin A, vitamin K, all of it. And like fruit doesn't have that much of that. Yes, it has minerals. Like he loves oranges, he loves apples. We'll give him fruit that's in season and that we can get locally, but it's never in replacement of these really sacred animal
Right.
foods.
Well,
And
and I think you bring up a good point because when I work with, families or parents on their nutrition, I overemphasize what is a snack because in the world of snacks, people see snacks as chips, candy, you know, ice cream, whatever, like junk food, you
yeah,
know. And and I'm like, a snack can be a mini serving of leftovers from dinner. You can
yes.
have some meat, some green beans, and some potatoes, and just have a smaller version of that.
Hmm.
Anything can be a snack, like anything can be a meal.
Yes.
Like my first meal today was this fabulous sausage. I love the sausage. It comes from a farm, and oh, it's like amazing. That was my first meal. It wasn't eggs or wasn't my normal smoothie because I didn't have any made, but I had leftover sausage from dinner, and that was my first meal. Like your meals don't have to be, oh, this you have eggs for breakfast or cereal and milk for breakfast, and you don't, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You could have eggs and cereal and milk for dinner, but there's not a written code to what this is. Anything healthy can be a portion of a meal or
Yeah.
the whole meal for the day.
Well, in snacking in general, it was made up by the food industry to
Hmm.
sell foods. I mean, if
So
you go back not that many years, just like into our grandparents' generation, you didn't really snack. You ate breakfast, maybe. I mean, I think breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but
I do love me some
like
breakfast.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you were like a reminder that I love to tell people is you are supposed to be hungry by the time a meal comes around. You're not supposed to be walking around in this constant state of, I could nosh. Like by the time a meal comes, it is good for you to feel hungry. And we have been conditioned. I mean, I know this was my generation growing up That like hunger is something we have to constantly stave off. Are you hungry? Have a snack. And then parents wonder why their kids are picky eaters. Because I mean, there's a bunch of reasons why kids are picky eaters, and we can talk more about that if that's interesting. But one of them is they're not actually hungry by the time you sit them down for a
Right.
meal, and it's really easy to refuse food if you had three snacks in the last 4 hours,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll tell parents if your child comes and they're like, Mommy, I'm hungry, and it's like 20 minutes to dinner, well, that's a great time to give them the vegetables of the meal. Okay, well, the broccoli's ready, so here you go. Eat the broccoli. As opposed to a snack. Here's some fruit, here's some, chips, here's some crackers, here's some whatever. You can actually give them part of the meal that's ready.
Oh, for sure. Or also just say, I know you're hungry. Dinner's going to be ready soon.
Right.
And that's
Ex-
also okay. I mean, we definitely want to support, proper blood sugar regulation. And the more that we focus on fats and proteins for our kids, the more stable their blood sugar is going to be and the less they'll feel like they need those snacks. It's so funny. People just, I feel like cognitively disassociate sometimes for their kids. I have a group program called the Well Woman Collective. And this woman was in the program last year and she has three kids and, had just finished nursing. The youngest one, I think, was like 2.5, and she had just finished nursing and was like ready to like reclaim her body.
right.
And we totally changed her life when it came to balancing her blood sugar. I have all these recommendations and kind of like rules around, stabilizing your blood sugar, eating, 30 grams of protein within an hour of waking, making sure you're getting, enough protein throughout the day, pairing, fats with proteins. And so one of my rules is no naked carbs. And so what is a carb? A carb is like people think of carbs as pizza and pasta, but it's
Right.
also a banana, an apple. All fruit is carbohydrate. A cracker that doesn't have a good fat in it would be a carbohydrate anyways. So one of my rules is no naked carbs. So anytime you eat a carbohydrate, you need to pair it with fat or protein to keep your blood sugar stable. So a banana is not a great snack on its own. If you add some, cheese on the side or something, it becomes
Right.
more stable
Peanut
snack.
butter,
And this totally changed her life.
salami.
Yeah, totally. And, this totally changed her life. And then, like, 2 months later, she's been talking about how much more energy she has, how much more stable she has. She was like, I was thinking about it. Do these rules apply to kids too? And it's so funny. Like, we think of kids like they're a different species, but they're
Yeah.
really just little
No,
humans.
they're
So of
just
course, it
humans.
applies to them, you
Right.
know? So, like, if you don't feel good when you eat a big, like like what we think of as a good snack, but really is not actually stabilizing for your blood sugar, of course your kid's going to be having more meltdowns and feel hungry sooner
Right.
and all
And be
those things.
irritable and
Yeah, we have to
exactly.
apply the same rules we're applying to ourselves to our children.
Yeah. And then that comes down like how many people prepare a meal where it's like they're preparing dinner and then they have this side dinner for their kids.
Yeah.
And my kids always ate what I made for dinner. There were not choices. There was not, oh, what would you rather have?
No.
No, here's dinner. We got
Yeah.
some salmon and whatever, potatoes and, green beans, whatever the dinner is, that's dinner.
Yeah.
And they also learn to eat a variety of things because you're not catering to, oh no, I just want chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese.
And I think I want to have a lot of compassion for a lot of parents because, picky eating oftentimes is also a sign of gut dysfunction. And it's really driven by like the bacteria. We have 3 pounds of bacteria that live in our gut that use us as a host, and they're living and they're very strong-willed. And a lot of times when we've unintentionally created an environment that loves starches in our kids' guts because of the ways that we introduce solids and or the way that our microbiome looked when we were pregnant and then giving birth to our children, which is when they're getting like a big inoculation of bacteria, we can create an environment where they have very strong preferences. Like if kids who don't want to eat meat, for example, tends to be that their digestive system isn't strong enough to break it down. Starchy carbs are very easy to break down. Protein is a lot more challenging. So if your kid like really doesn't ever want the meat, that could be a sign that their body isn't really fully capable of breaking that down and needs additional support. And so sometimes, it really is like there's like a little bacteria demon inside the bait, the child being like, I don't want this. And I get that that's really hard. And it is your responsibility as a parent to hold the line and to recognize that if you continue to feed your children those foods that they're craving, that you're never going to get ahead of it. And we have
Right.
to really rebuild the gut. And for people who, struggle with this, I feel you that is like super challenging. And the time, the younger they are when you help them with that, the better. And there is a way out of it. My son, I was thinking, I just was like going through some old videos, and over Thanksgiving, we went out for oysters with my in-laws when we were in Seattle. And he was 18 months old at the time. And we're all eating raw oysters. And he's going, more oysters, more oysters. He just loves the raw oysters, more oysters.
Man after
And
my own heart.
right, I'm like, I know we all want more oysters. Like, trust me.
Bring
More
on
than
the
enough per
oysters.
person. But and everyone is looking around at us and they're like, wow, we can't believe you're feeding your 18-month-old oysters. And I'm like, I can't believe you're feeding your 18-month-old puffs,
Right,
like which one
right.
of these is the real food? And recognizing like the more you get stuck in that, like if your kid is like, I don't want to
It
eat
is.
that,
It's
and
like a
you
rut.
then allow them to have something else, you're continuing to perpetuate that cycle. And it's not just a matter of them being a picky eater, but it also could be an indicator of something going on in their body that's going to manifest potentially, if you don't deal with it now, as something more serious later.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that your children come to you with a fresh slate. Now, that doesn't mean if there's some ailments that, when they were babies that, they're sick or something's going on. If they're healthy, they come to you with a fresh slate of habits, they basic life needs, sleep, food, shelter, love. That's like it. Their basic life needs to be clean. They need diaper changes. But everything else can be taught. And I think in this world with so much information, there's a lot of assumptions going on too. There's a lot of assumptions. Well, like we're saying, this is what kids eat. Kids don't eat the oysters. Kids eat the little puffy things. Kids don't eat, crabs or whatever, don't eat steak. Kids eat this, and they eat hot dogs and, whatever. And it's a lot of that is like, well, that's normal. Why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I just make my child, a grilled cheese when I'm having a nice, grilled chicken dinner? And I think that kind of um, belief also has to turn around. We have to help parents realize, well, it's not really, it may seem normal, but it's not necessarily good for your child.
It's maybe common, but it's not normal. It is
Correct.
not
Better
biologically
word,
normal.
common. Right.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
mean,
much
I think a good example of that is, when we look, although I was going to say if we look around the world, but the world is kind of catching up with the Western diet, but even still, if you go to places like France, there's no such thing as a kids menu. Like
right.
that, it doesn't exist. They also spend twice as much or more on food than we do in America. And I think that, it really comes down to if we understand that we are what we eat and we are what we eat eats, we will probably start making better decisions about what we're putting on our own plates and therefore our children's plates too. And it is an interesting thing for me, and I do want to reiterate it because as much as I do believe a nourished mother creates a nourished family, I also see examples of it sometimes where someone who eats very healthy for themselves is serving their kid mac and cheese from Chick-fil-A that they got on the way home. And, I think that when you really understand and like fully root into a traditional nutrition approach and understand, the root causes of sometimes like certain things that are happening in your body, then that translates more to your children. But if you were listening to this and you're like, oh, I'm a pretty healthy eater, like one, my question for you is what is actually healthy? Because if I had a dime for every time someone told me, you know, what is a healthy diet? Or I have a healthy diet, and then I look at their diet and we're like, okay, here are some things that we really need to change because they've just been misinformed by,
Right.
powers that be that have monetary interest in telling you what is healthy and isn't actually for you. I'd probably be having this conversation from a yacht or something. Seriously, like I can't even tell you how often I hear that and how misinformed so many people are. So one, like question, is what I'm eating actually healthy? And like, where did I get that information from? And do I feel as good as I want to feel? Something I ask my clients to play is the game of how good can it get? Like, how good could you really feel? Like, is it normal for you to be that tired? Is it normal for you to have not poop for 2 days, or on the opposite, like have a lot of bloating or digestion? Like these things might be common, but they're not normal. And then also, like, if you are someone who actually is really eating well, are you gifting your kids that same gift? Because you know, also for all the people who were like, well, I ate it growing up and it's okay. I don't know if you've seen on social
Right.
media, there are these posts where it's like what Breyer's ice cream used to be was cream,
Right.
butter, sugar. And now it's like
All chemicals.
15 chemicals that like it's so manufactured, you can't actually call it real ice cream.
Yeah. You
So,
can't even compare it.
it isn't just apples to apples. It really is not. It's apples to manufactured apples, and they're not the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's really important that people recognize that what they're being told to believe is not always the truth. And how many times does it happen where they're like, coffee is great for you, coffee is bad for you, coffee, like, how you get, okay, this is really good for you, next year this same thing is really bad for you. So there's all this conflict of information, and then a lot of people are like, whatever, I like this, I've been eating it, I'm not dead.
Yeah.
But how do you feel? And I think that is really important. And how do your kids feel? And why are you so upset with that attitude? And why are they having an attitude? And are they getting enough sleep? And what are they eating right before they go to sleep? Or, and I know a lot of people are thinking, honestly, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. I don't have time to go to the health food store and buy stuff and figure out what's good and what's not good. But an investment in a little bit of extra effort, whether you do your own research or you reach out to you, Stephanie, or you reach out to me, but Stephanie is more knowledgeable in the nutrition aspect of things. But, reach out to anyone who can help you. As parents, we all have those moments. The pressure builds up, the noise gets too much, and before we know it, we're raising our voices higher than we ever intended. But what if there was a better way? Introducing 21 Days to Stop Yelling at Your Kids, a revolutionary program designed to help you communicate with your children without yelling. Imagine a home filled with understanding and respect, where your words have impact without the need to raise your voice. Created through my over 40 years of experience, this course offers you practical, easy to implement strategies that work in real life. You'll learn through interactive lessons, engaging exercises, and a supportive community. No judgments, just guidance. Because being a parent doesn't have to mean you're perfect. It's about growing, and it's about becoming intentional. In just 21 days, life will be calmer and more harmonious. What if you don't get the course? Where will you be in 21 days? Still feeling like a bad parent? I encourage you to join the millions of parents that I have helped who have found a new path to communication and connection. Visit quityelling.com to enroll in the 21 Days to Stop Yelling course today. And for our podcast listeners, use the code PODCAST for a 60% discount. Quityelling.com, because love speaks so much louder than yelling. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. The little bit of time you spend learning a different and better way, you actually gain time. That's what people don't realize. time becomes, you know, an added bonus. Why? Number one, you're not sick all the time. Number two, your kids aren't sick all the time. There's not viruses going around, and they're not going to school, and there's not all these symptoms that are coming from the core problem of poor nutrition. And that's what people have to relieve, because I know, like, when I tell them you need a system for parenting, there's a system. And they, well, I don't even have time to try. Well, the truth is, you don't have time not to try, because
Right.
making the effort makes more time.
100%. I'm really one thing I just want to say before I say what I was going to say is like it also doesn't have to be so time consuming to make nourishing food. I mean, I am obsessed with my slow cooker slash instant pot, and I will sometimes spend, and I love tracking this because it's what I do, right? I'll spend about 10 minutes in the morning putting something in there, and then I finish up with work. I play with my son for a little bit, and dinner's ready.
Right.
And
I
it's,
do love
oh
it.
my
I just
God,
made
that's
some
amazing.
amazing kale soup the other day.
Like there are so many amazing ways to do that, and like it is a learning curve, especially if and these are but this is why you have to do it, because this is wisdom that what should have been passed down to us and the chain was broken.
Right.
And we are now tasked with the responsibility of creating the chain of wisdom again, to giving our children these tools so that they can go on to have these nourishing traditions so that they nourish their children and beyond. Like we have this opportunity to like reverse engineer what's going on here and go back and make generational wellness. But the thing that I wanted to say, so I'm a really big fan of the Weston A. Price Foundation. I love the work that they do in focusing on nutrition for young children, for pregnant and postpartum moms. I mean, I just think it's incredible. And I've been a fan of their work for over a decade. And Weston A. Price was a dentist who, in the early 1900s, traveled to indigenous communities all over the world. So different parts of the world, right? Looking at people in the Arctic, looking at people in Africa, looking at people in like Northern Europe, and they were all eating very different diets, but they had what he developed were these 12 principles of healthy eating that they all followed. Um, and they're amazing. I'm not going to go through all of them right now for the sake of time, and but everyone should be looking them up. And I think if you're looking for something to follow in terms of nutrition philosophy, it's a really great place to start. But what I was going to say about Weston A. Price is something he found is that every single one of the cultures that he visited and that he lived with and studied all had sacred foods that they considered sacred for pregnancy, for preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, and young children. And they went to great effort and great length to secure them.
Hmm.
When was the last time you feel like, and I'm speaking, to parents here, that you went to great effort and great length to secure deeply nourishing food for your children? And if you can't remember when that was, then we're not doing something right. It
I
is not
totally
a
agree.
problem to spend time preparing and sourcing good food. And if you're not doing that, then other things need to be reprioritized in your life. It doesn't mean that we can't make it easier or more convenient, but convenience and easiness is not supposed to be the most important thing when it comes
Right.
to nutrition.
Priority is like that is key. What are you prioritizing? What is more important in my eyes than you and your children and your
Yeah.
health? Because the truth is, if you don't have your health, if your children don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Mhm.
Without health, good health, the rest is like garnish, you know? And when you talked about fixing the meals and putting together the crock pot meal or whatever you're fixing, involve your children too, because that's how they're going to learn how
Mhm.
to cook and how to also maintain that good nutrition as they become adults. We're raising adults. I say it a million times, not kids. They're
Yeah.
already kids. So prepare them and let them join. It's fun. They want
Yeah.
to do stuff with you, and they want to do grown up stuff with you, not just kiddie stuff.
Yeah, we have a helper stool is what we call it. It's one of those like little tower things that my toddler can crawl into. He has his own knife that he always asks for. My own knife, own knife. That's like a special knife that's wooden for him to use. He loves stirring the pot. He's smelling, he's tasting, he's eating the raw garlic as we're cutting it. It's so important for them to get that exposure. And I'm going to even take it a step further, like not just teach your kids how to cook, but teach them where their food comes from. I mean, the farm that we get our food from, we go with our son, even though it's a 40-minute drive in the car. And, like he doesn't love the car, but we get there and we go visit the roosters and the chickens and the ducks, and we
That's so
show him
great.
the eggs, and he pets the cows, and he understands like this is what we say like these cows become our dinner. And like that's kind of a weird concept for a
It
kid,
is
but also
weird. Right.
it's also important for our children to understand where their food comes from, because then you end up with adults. Like I have friends and even family members who won't eat a fish if it looks like a fish. Like if it comes to the table, like the whole
Like a
fish,
whole fish with a
they
head.
can't eat it. And they can't eat, chicken that looks like chicken. Like it has to be completely stripped of all the things. And that makes me so sad, because we do need to have an understanding of where our food comes from, because that's how then we can demand that that food is actually good for us.
Right.
And so I think it's, yes, get your kids involved in the kitchen, but also get them understanding like,
Absolutely.
and kids are smart.
All the steps, shopping, everything.
And kids are really smart. I had a client who was really struggling with her son. He had a lot of food allergies, so he already felt, restricted. But at school, they would offer him just like really yucky food full of ingredients that she wouldn't have allowed at home. And she was just like, I don't know what to do. And I said, I think he was 5 years old at the time. I said, I think you're not giving him enough credit. And so we came up with this strategy. Let's talk to him about real food and fake food. And in our family, we eat real food. And this is why we eat real food, because it's important for our bodies. And this is what fake food can do for our bodies. And of course, depending on the age your kid is, like change the,
Age appropriate conversation.
yeah.
Right.
And he started actively saying no when offered junk food at school or at soccer, because he ate real food and that wasn't real food. And I've had other clients who, listen to my group program recordings when they're like in the kitchen, and their kids who are a little bit older, like 8 and 10, and who are listening, and they'll realize like as they're sitting down for dinner. So one of the things that I educate about is you actually shouldn't drink too many fluids when you're eating, because it can dilute your digestive juices and make you not break your food down as well. And so one of the girls, the mom didn't even know she had been really listening, She was like pouring her water at dinner, and she goes, but not too much, mommy. I need it, before and after the meal. I don't want to dilute my digestive juices. Like our kids want to be good.
They do.
Those same
They
girls.
want to learn. They want to listen.
Yes, and those same girls went to their mom. They have an amazing story. Their mom did a lot of work with me and totally changed the like trajectory of their family and their health. And her kids, after changing their diet, which was really hard for them in the beginning, they loved their junk food and all of
Right.
those things, and it was a big shift. And it was hard. And this work isn't always easy. But a few months later, her daughter came to her and she said, "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to only feed my kids healthy food from the beginning, so they don't know what the other foods taste like and don't have to go through that, but they're also going to feel really good." Like she got it,
Right. Right.
Like give your kids more credit. This is something that they intrinsically want, and you get to be their guide. And it's a beautiful, sacred responsibility.
Right. I totally agree. And when, if parents that are listening are thinking, well, my kid's not going to give this up. My kid's not going to give up soda. My kid's not going to give up chocolate. I'm not going to give up chocolate, whatever it is. You also have to realize that your body craves it if it's constantly eating it. And like if
Mhm.
you decide, okay, I'm going to not eat chocolate for 4 days, if this is your choice, not that dark chocolate is bad for you, but if you're not going to eat a Coke, drink a Coke for 4 days, your body will stop wanting it. It wants it because it's always used to having it. It's like a habit.
Totally. And your taste buds change a lot, and so do our kids. I mean, when I eat, like, we went to Italy over the summer for my sister's wedding, and I was eating like gelato. I mean, we were intentional about not going to the places that had all the artificial colors and stuff, which, by the way, this is easy to do. Like, it's easy to literally look up on your phone and be like, natural gelato places, and then find them and like look at the ingredient list. Like, it's not that hard.
And
But
you can
anyway,
ask them too. I do
totally.
that a lot with
Yeah.
meat places, and I'll just ask them.
Yeah, absolutely. And but like I even like I'm so used to I make my own ice cream at home and I'm so used to just like the way that we use natural sweeteners and like not having, even like oh not whatever. It was fine to eat it, but I would notice like how sweet it was and like how my taste buds were so not adjusted to it. Um like your taste buds change pretty quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. And kids have tons of them, tons of them. So
Yes.
it's like, also remember that them trying things, they don't have to like everything. And it doesn't mean they're not going to like it forever because some things just have stronger flavors. And for a child that has all these taste buds, the strong flavor is something that they may not like, but 2 years down the road, they may like it again. Try, like,
Yeah.
don't, eliminate it. They'll never eat this. They'll never eat this.
Yeah. It's estimated that we need 14 to 16 exposures to a food to really, you know, adapt to it. And so if your kid doesn't like something one time, that doesn't mean you don't stop trying it. You try it in a different preparation and you keep, there's, when I went back to school for nutrition, I nannied full time during the day and I went to school at night. And so those kids were like my little test subjects. And I had this rule called one bite, no thank you. You have to have one bite. And if after that you say no thank you don't want any more, that's fine. And it was amazing to watch over the course of a couple months how that one bite, no thank you turned into those kids eating all of those
Yeah.
foods that they, thought they didn't like. I mean, as an adult, I had to do that when I moved to the Middle East when I was in for university. I went to school abroad and I hated olives. I hated them. Olives are not a great thing to hate if you live in the Middle East. Like it's
Right.
a very big part of, cuisine there.
Big part
So
of
I would go to,
Mediterranean diet.
and I would go to these big like outdoor markets, where they're selling food and everything. And there'd be these like olive stands and they're just piles of olives everywhere. And I made a deal with myself that every time I went to the shuk, I had to have an olive. Like I had to taste one. And I would go up and I would say, okay, give me an olive. And within a couple months, I mean, probably even sooner than that, depending on, but within like probably 15 times of me trying this olives, now I love olives. Olives are like one of my favorite foods. Like even as adults, we're
Yeah,
really
you do.
adaptable. And so, don't give up on yourself or your kids if they think they don't like something.
I did the same thing. I never liked mushrooms. I never liked mushrooms. And then when I started eating healthy, I was like, okay, you have to eat mushrooms. You just need to get over this. This is dumb. And so I started eating mushrooms. Now, like if I have an option to put a vegetable in a dish, it's a mushroom. I love
Yeah,
mushrooms now.
they're the
I'm like,
best.
throw in the mushrooms, cook up the mushrooms. And I love them now. And so like just like you say, don't think that just because they don't like something once, they can't try it again. I remember we have a three no thank you bite rule in our home.
Cool.
And when my
Okay.
grandson was little, I gave him, those seaweed sheets
Mm-hmm.
in the car. I gave him a pack of them, and he looks at it and he goes, "Gammon, is this one of those things that I'm not gonna like at first, but then I'm really gonna love it?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And he tastes it, and he's like, he tastes it again, and then he ate the whole pack. It was like done, you know. And they just get used, they may not like it at first. The reason I say more than one is because sometimes that first taste is kind of weird. And then the second taste is not as weird.
Yeah.
And the third taste, hopefully, is like, oh, yeah, this is great. Or they don't like it. I mean, that's why there's
You're
a lot
allowed
of
to have
food
things
out
you
there.
don't
You
like.
don't have to like everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. One thing I did want to just talk about today, because I think when we were talking about like reading ingredient labels, something that I feel like would the biggest thing that if someone is listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, but like I want to start, I want to do something. My advice to you would be pay attention to the fats. And why this is relevant is in 1900, I just recently learned the statistic and it blows my mind. Seed oils were 1% of an American's diet. Okay. When it comes to fat, guess what they are today?
I can only imagine. Uh,
85%.
oh my gosh. I was like going to say 35.
85%.
85%.
And when we know that this is influencing everything from the way hormones are being expressed to mental health disorders to metabolic health. I mean, it's truly, I think, if you can make one change in your life, staying away from these industrial oils is the biggest change that you can make. And they are so pervasive in packaged foods. And so, as you're looking at ingredient labels, I think the number one, like if you're going to do one thing that you take away that you're like, this is going to be a change, is staying away from fats like canola oil, sunflower seed oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil, cottonseed oil, soybean oil, all those oils. Olive oil is okay. Coconut oil is great. Avocado oil is on the border. A study came out of UC Davis not that long ago that showed that like 85% of avocado oils on the market aren't really avocado
I
oil and
know.
they're cut with the other oils. So I don't love it. But like it's a little bit more in that gray category. But if you can stay away from those foods and learn to look at labels to recognize that, it will totally change you and your kid's life. So, we are very adamantly seed oil free. We use the Seed Oil Scout app when we eat out. So we only eat at restaurants. You can ask restaurants, hey, can you cook our food in butter? Can you cook our food in olive oil? And a lot of times they're going to be able to accommodate you. So I really think that it's like the number one thing that parents and kids can be doing when they're like trying to make a single change.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to note is that we're not saying go in and change your whole diet. Like these small steps will eventually lead to you converting your diet to what,
Yeah.
you know, is better for you and you feel better about. But don't feel like, okay, so I have to stop eating everything I'm eating. Like, I don't even know what to get. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
starting point.
And for a lot of moms too, I mean, just one other thing I'll add is like something that I really commonly see. So one of the tests that I do in my practice is we do a hair tissue mineral analysis. So we're looking at mineral levels through the hair. And it's different than what's in the blood because the blood's the highway system. And so like it really is dependent on what you ate for dinner the night before. Whereas what we're able to see with this is like a 3-month snapshot of what's going on mineral wise. And minerals are involved in everything. They're involved in how our body expresses energy. So how much energy we have, how much, and also what we're able to see is like how the body is dealing with stress, which is a really cool way that this test is really unique when it comes to lab tests that we're doing. And something that I commonly see with moms is that either they're so depleted in their own mineral status and then their body is choosing to sometimes create what we call a calcium shell as a response to that stress, and those parents tend to be like very overwhelmed with things that like shouldn't actually be
Mm,
that overwhelming. And so I always offer this because I think parenthood is hard enough, and when we have minerals on our side, I mean, like truly the transformation I've been able to see with my clients, like look, I do this because I love this work and like yes, having pain-free periods and having amazing energy and all of that is like amazing, but it's really about like what does that mean for your life? So when someone gets
right.
on the phone with me and she says, I didn't snap at my kids in a way that I normally would have because my capacity for BS has like expanded by tenfold because I'm actually taking care of myself. Like that's what I mean when I say a nourished mother is a nourished family, right?
Right.
Like you being well. So if you're listening to this, I'm just offering to you, like, if you're already feeling like you're at capacity and this feels like too much, this is actually probably the thing that you need the most
Right.
because by investing in this, you are going to expand your capacity to show up as the parent you want to be in the world, to show up in your career the way you want, to show up in your partnership, in your marriage. Like the opportunities are endless. And so, really offering, like, if this does feel overwhelming, it also might be that like your body is already at capacity. And by giving this to it, you are going to unlock potential you didn't even know you had.
I love it. So, Stephanie, before we say goodbye, please tell our listeners how they can reach you.
Yeah. Well, I would love to invite anyone who's listening to this to come reach out to me, come say hi and tell me what was most insightful for you in this episode. Like, I love connecting with other parents and with other people who are on this journey. So, Instagram is my primary place of social media. Stephanie Adler Wellness. Stephanie is with an F. So Stefanie, Adler, Adler, wellness. And yeah, send me a message and tell me what the thing that, you were most surprised by, or the thing that you are, feeling most excited about based on this episode. I read all of my own messages, and I love connecting with people. So please come say hi. I also have a podcast called The Wisdom of the Womb. So if you want to get nerdy and go deeper on some of these topics that we talked about, please come say what's up over there. And yeah, if you're interested in doing a hair mineral analysis test with me, or learning more about how you can support your family's nutrition better, I'm your girl.
There you go. So Stephanie Adler Wellness on Instagram, and reach out. There's no risk of reaching out.
Yeah.
It's not a sign of weakness. It's not anything. It's a sign of strength. So reach out. And right now, guys, if you want to stop yelling, if you want to combine a system in your home with a system of how you're being nutritious, you can even go to quityelling.com, get my 21-day stop yelling program, put in the coupon code HELP ME, and you can stop yelling and change the dynamic of your home. Start with creating healthier meals and foods. How great would that be by a month from now?
I love
Could
that.
be a whole different dynamic.
Totally.
So, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. I'm truly grateful for all the information you gave.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor.
Well, I am thrilled too. And I know our listeners, if you guys found value from this, and I find it hard to believe you wouldn't have found value from it, please share it to your friends. Let's make this world a healthier place for everybody. And they'll only learn how to be healthy if they're willing to take the time to listen and really consider their options. So share this out. Give us a comment below so other people that are looking for podcasts know that this was valuable to you. As always, guys, I wish you days filled with peace, love, tons of laughter. Really is the best medicine. You have to laugh a lot. And if you're feeling good, you'll find things really funny. So have a lot of humor, have a lot of fun, and I'll see you next time on the next episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. If this episode was helpful to you, please share it with a friend and leave us a review that will help others. Wonder why kids don't come with a manual? Well, wonder no more, because I wrote you one, and it's just won a wonderful Mom's Choice Award. Go to celiasbooks.com and buy your copy of Raising Happy Toddlers, as well as my children's books. I appreciate you being part of my mission to help 10 million parents stop yelling at their kids. Please be intentional and hug on those kids of yours. See you at the next episode.